hello, I'm back reviewing Black Clover Volume 14. Yeah, with this one, it almost concludes the Royal Knight's entrance exam. And it starts off with Alexdora remembering when he met William on a battlefield. Where at towards the end of the battle, he had been ambushed and he fell into a deep cavern, but then William found and rescued him, and it sort of caused him to adore him a lot, and it later goes on to kind of show why he's mad at Yuno, because Yuno was just some teenager who just joined the Golden Dawn, and William already really likes him and showed him a whole bunch of attention and kept calling him by his name apparently. And apparently William expects a whole lot from him and thinks he might be a good candidate to become the next captain, even though he only been in the Golden Dawn for a couple months at that point, while William was in the squad for years. And it cuts back over to Noel fighting Solid, where he ended up chasing after her and breaking the plan, just so he could try and fight and defeat Noel. But the battle doesn't last too long because Yuno ends up defeating Alexdora pretty easily by creating a tornado inside of his golem thing that he encased the stone in. And Noel ends up using her Sea Dragon's role to defeat Salad. And she actually freaks him out so much that he almost seems to hesitate trying to attack her, because her spell is huge compared to his, and she basically knocks him out in one go. No, the Solid had the crystal with him. I forgot. She's the one who ends up breaking the crystal, and it leaves Alexdora being really confused as to how Yuno beat him. It almost is a surprise that he's still convinced that Yuno is that powerful, considering all of this stuff that Yuno's done since he joined, and how powerful he is. And it does kind of show how arrogant people like Alexdora are, because they don't see the scale that people like Yuno have. Because Yuno got the 4-leaf clover. He's proven to be able to defeat a whole bunch of people kind of by himself. He has this elemental spirit Syl with him. And he's shown to, and even Captain William ended up really liking him and kind of getting his respect, but Alexdora just can't see it. And it's kind of revealed that Noel's been training off screen, that she can use the Sea Dragon's Sword 2 more times, because when she fought Fido, she could only use it the once because she was so powerful. And that mostly concludes the first part of their entrance exams, where there's another stage going on, and the Wizard King ends up getting people to change the layout so that they can get used to fighting on different terrain. And the one guy Asta and Mimosa are teamed up with, he's actually super annoyed by this because he set traps up everywhere, and he never expected that this would happen. Which also begs the question, again, it's revealed later that the Wizard King suspected more people in the Magic Knights to be traitors, and yet they didn't have any people watching the area, because he just easily walked in and set all these traps, and apparently nobody knew unless the Wizard King wanted somebody to do something like this in order to prove they're a traitor. But still seems kind of risky, because you have all of these Magic Knights coming here. Julius is going there, King's going there. So it just seems kind of weird that he apparently spent the whole night in this area setting traps and like nobody found out he did this or even like brought it up or anything. And he also somehow ended up learning the location of the test, even though it was apparently highly classified. He said he found intel on it, so I'm kind of assuming he learned it from the assistant of the guy he stole the identity from, because he was probably going to the Magic Knights, the Royal Knights exam to take it, so that he may have known about it because he's like a vice captain. And so I'm also assuming maybe assistant found out about it somehow. And so they end up going against Mimosa's brother. And Asta, he, using like key, he's able to sense that there's more traps in the area. I think the sifting field didn't completely destroy the traps. I think they just kind of like sifted them around. I think that's why he was annoyed. And then Asta actually destroys them all when he kind of goes into like his, I think it was called like the Black Asta form or something. And he destroys it using a move called Black Hurricane, where he destroys the traps and destroys Curse's like cherry blossom field, and he tries to convince the one guy who we find out his name is like Sora to actually come up with a plan and let them in on the plan and not just do like whatever he wants. And so he kind of goes into more detail on some of the traps. These set up like the rough traps that he could set up right away, which are binding traps, pitfall traps, and then landmine traps. And he says they all disappear after one use. And so I don't know if I mentioned this in the last one, but this is kind of the first time we see someone like specialize in traps. Because they had traps during the beginning of the series when they enter the temple where they first fight like Mouse. But I think he's like the first character to like specialize in making traps. And like this battle and the one near the end helped to sort of convince Sora to sort of change his mind about the Magic Knights, because we later find out his dad was like the first commoner to have joined the Magic Knights, and his personality and ideas kind of similar to Asta's in a way, where he was super excited to join. He was in the Purple Orcas, I believe, where he kept praising all of his comrades. He was really like super friendly to them and very like kind, but they ended up killing him later on, where it was a bunch of nobles who didn't like the fact that they were fighting alongside a commoner and ended up taking him out, and Sora ended up overhearing this. And this, along with meeting a bunch of Magic Knights who were also who at that point seemed to be mostly made up of royals and nobles who basically used their power to go after everyone else, of believing they were better than everyone, like attacking everyone and believing that they could get away with it, like cowardice view on the Magic Knights, believing that all of them would like that, even if not all of them are, because like there are a lot of them who act like normal siblings, and like Electora and several authors who act super arrogant. They don't seem to care about commoners that much. Like Language too. Like so many of them are like pretty terrible people that I don't blame him that much for not liking the Magic Knights not that much, because there aren't that many of them who are like Asta or the Black Bulls, or like Noelle Seed changes and she becomes a much nicer person. Like the Vermilion siblings aren't that bad either, like they're pretty decent people, but there's not a whole lot of them in the Magic Knights. But they all are like, so many of them are pretty terrible people. And so the battle continues. Soul ends up trying to like destroy the crystal. She ends up being like the only one left, but Mimosa ended up putting some of her own magic into a golem so that it starts to sprout a whole bunch of plants. And Mimosa's able to like control it. Because like I think she said like earth magic and plant magic are like close enough to each other that she should be able to control it for like a couple of seconds, like long enough for like them to destroy it. And then so like once again starts to like tell all of them kind of like what they did wrong. He's especially pretty bad too, cause the next team ends up being Fenril, Hammond, and Leo fighting against Langris, Sake, and the one female team member. I think she's from the Aqua Deer. I can't remember her name. And then we get more into sort of the backstory where Langris and Fenril are actually half brothers, where they have like different moms. Where even from a young age, Langris was praised as being a lot stronger than Fenril, and believing himself to be a lot better as a result. And then they get introduced to Finesse, who she would become the fiancé of the next head of the Fard House. She originally thinks it's gonna be Langris because he's a lot older. So he should be next in line, but he starts saying that it's probably Langris. And like even though he gets treated badly by his parents and Langris, he still tries to like praise his brother about being a lot better at everything and talking about how skilled his magic is. Like, I don't know how much, but also like how much of this is him being kind or him just kind of like internalizing what people are saying about him, that he's not that good and Langris is a lot better. Because we do see he's actually really skilled at using his magic, but it just kind of seemed like he never put any effort into that training that much until like recently. Because he's not really until like the underwater temple where he starts to like show off more of his magic, fighting with it, and then we see in this one he's fighting a lot more with it. Finesse ends up praising Fenril, talking about how much of a kind person he is, and talking about how he's the one who's a wonderful knight. But this only makes Langris really angry because he thinks she's saying he's inferior to Fenril, and how much he doesn't like him because Fenril left the family. Like, I think it was not long after this. And so he ends up making Sake disappear into the Black Bull's hideout, and he ends up fighting one-on-one with Langris. But it starts to reveal that something is very, very wrong with him. Like, more so than normal. Because he ends up becoming so angry and, like, violent. And, like, losing control of himself, which people say isn't really like him. And they start recognizing sort of his magic, where it feels like when Fido and Fauna lost control and gained like the third eye, where they say it's like a very similar like aura to that, where it ends up going so overboard that it almost kills Fenril, and was about to like go and finish the job if Magna, Locke, and Asta hadn't jumped in. And it sort of does so that something is very wrong with him, because he's doing all of this in front of everyone and the Wizard King. It's like, if everyone is first introduced, he didn't seem to care about what happened to the townspeople who he's trying to save, but he also seemed, I don't know, like cool-headed, like he knew what he was doing. But now he's just got off the deep end. Like the other characters, like Claus and point out that he's always been kind of like belligerent, but he's never been like this, and that something's wrong. I mean, like, he's only appeared like basically once beforehand. Like, I think he sort of briefly for the Star Festival, but I don't think he had any lines until the only time he really spoke that much was like right before the Witch Kingdom arc. He shows up, and so part of me was just that he had a bit more screen time for this, just to show like how different he is. But even with the one time we saw him, this seems pretty off even for him. Cause like even during the right before the capital invasion, the authors, when they're at the party, the authors didn't try and do anything in the presence of the Wizard King. Like, it wasn't until like they all knew he had left before they started like going after Mimosa and Claus and Asta and at the party. And so it's sort of like for him to try and do this in front of the Wizard King, who like everyone knows is like this extremely powerful person. Like, he can control time. He's doing all of this. He's not apparently not even like listening to him that much, and just kind of doing what he wants. Even when the Wizard King kind of like threatens him, and then he doesn't even try and wait for an answer. When he wants you to try and fight Asta, he just let me fight them first, and just goes right ahead without even waiting for like an answer. And so this basically cuts over to Julius talking with Marx. Well, Marx is remembering Julius saying that he thinks that there's more traitors in the Magic Knights, where he kind of feels like someone's doing it like unwittingly or like possibly like unknowingly. Well, Marx thinks maybe it's some sort of spell, and Julius says maybe not. It's more like, I wonder, maybe it is a spell. Julius also says part of the reason for the Royal Nudge test is because he wanted to try and bring the traitor to like out in the open, and he thinks that like expanding the magic and then fighting other like powerful people will show the true colors. And so the question is, when did Langris meet the Heir of the Midnight Sun? Because it probably had to be after the first time we met him. Because like the Underwater Temple happened maybe like 2 months ago. Like, I don't think we have a very specific timeline, but it seems like a bunch of this stuff is happening like pretty quickly. So I'm assuming the Underwater Temple was like a couple months ago, and then it was like right before that. No, it was right after the Underwater Temple, I'm sorry, that they made Langris, because Asta meets him after Fido like destroys his arms, and he gets like cursing them, and so they go to the Witch Kingdom to meet him, to meet the Witch Queen to heal them. Yeah, so it had to be between them meeting him sometime during the Witch Kingdom arc, and then sometime after that he either meets one of the members we've met before, like Fauna or the Licked, or the one guy, I think his name's Raina, the mage with the copy magic, and puts himself spell on him, or like another random member like Sally to like do this. And also part of this is also because Langris isn't the type of guy who seems to put that much effort into fighting because he's so strong. Like, spatial magic's pretty, like, dangerous if you know how to use it. And so it isn't until this that he really puts into the effort to try and, like, really fight. And also, like, this kind of brings up, this is the first time since the former Purple August captain, which we feel as a traitor, that anybody brings up that there might be another traitor in the Magic Knights. Like, it's been, like, what, like, 7 or 8 volumes since that happened, and apparently this is the first time anybody brings that up. Like, the only time that this was brought up is when Yami thought that William might be licked because they apparently have very similar, like, voices and builds. And their key thoughts similar, but, like, really, if anybody thought that someone else might be a traitor, they never, like, brought it up. Because after the one guy was revealed as a traitor, Julius sends the Black Bulls to the underwater temple. And, like, he did kind of mention that he thinks that there might be more people in on this because it does make sense that there has to be more people in the Magic Knights who are working for the Eye of the Midnight Sun. Like, it can't just be this one guy, and you really only trust the Black Bulls. They're not really like any of the other Magic Knight squads. Like, there's only, 7 members. Whereas Yami, Vanessa, Magna, Locke, Ghost, Sami, and then Gray, and I get Noelle and Asta. And, like, none of them really have the connections that the Eye of the Midnight Sun would need to try and infiltrate the Magic Knights or, like, the capital. And really, like, except for that moment, and then when Yami suspects William, no one ever really, like, brings it up that much that they're suspicious of anyone or other people, like, accusing each other of being a traitor. And also, it's like, if they think that someone's the unconscious traitor, why didn't they try and protect the location more? Like, I think I brought that up. Like, if they think that there's someone in there trying to, like, mess with them, wouldn't they want to try and protect it? Or, like I said, unless they wanted to see what somebody would do, and then, I don't know, like, Julius sees Sora, and maybe he knows that he uses trap magic, and when the trap magic appears on the thing, maybe he just assumes that, like, he was the one who set them, and, like, knows him because he knew his dad, and the reason he started, like, the star system was because he wanted to, like, reward, like, good behavior, and he was inspired by him to try to start to, like, eliminate, like, the class system in the Magic Knights and try and, like, foster, like, more of this, like, good behavior that Sora's dad showed. Because, like, Sora's dad, from what, like I said, from what we've seen, like, everybody else was, like, competing with each other, while he was, like, actually, like, trying to, like, help citizens and, like, protect them. While the other people didn't really seem to care, and, like, Julius wanted, like, more people in the Magic Knights like him. And so, this is, like, one of the main reasons why he wanted to become Wizard King, was because he wanted to try and, like, reform the Magic Knights. And so, like, this also reveals, like, why he wasn't suspicious of Sora when they first met at the Royal Knights test. Like, when they were kind of, like, setting up the teams and everything, Sora just kind of, like, shows up and, like, puts his arm around Julius. And I think he knew that he had a son. And so that's why he didn't say anything about who he was, because I think he kind of wanted Sora to, like, I don't know, like, figure things out and see what was going on Because, like, later on, like, I'll get a bit more into that, like, later. But, like, that was one of the reasons why the Julius didn't seem to react that much to seeing Sora. Because I think he was maybe also trying to honor his dad a bit by just kind of, like, letting him do his own thing, in a way. And also, like, this also goes a bit to explain how the other Midnight-san may have heard about the one stone in the underwater temple. Julius had sent the like boats to the underwater temple to get the stone, and they were there for like an hour before Fido and some other members of the Midnight Sun and I'm like crashing into the temple to try and take the stone. Because it seems like nobody knew that the stone was down there. And like, not even like the head priest guy knew it was down there. And so, unless Langris somehow knew that the stone was down there, either from hearing about it from someone who overheard Julius like sending the black boat there, or he heard it from somewhere else, and then he maybe told the other Midnight Sun without like realizing he told them, then, because it's like the underwater temple is like way harder to get to than like the Witch Kingdom. Like, cause like the Forest of Witches, it seems like kind of like anybody might go there because it's in a forest, and you could like almost get right in. Like, I don't know like what other protections there are for the forest, and it seems like most people would know who the Witch Queen is, so they might have been able to like see her and see that she's wearing the magic stone. But then the stone in the underwater temple, like, it was in a strong magic region, and like it was hard enough for Noelle to get down there even with her magic, because like her one defense spell, it's apparently pretty strong, and like I think it maybe almost broke. And they even went during a time where that like the underwater like photoxes whatever, well, supposed to be weak, but even Noelle was saying that they were still super strong. And so it's like, I don't think there's that many people going back and forth trying and seeing that there's a stone there, especially since I think they even said it's been a while since the last time anybody came down here. I also wonder what other circumstances that led to Julius thinking that there might be another traitor. I mean, it's safe to assume that he might have to suspect that there's someone else who's a traitor. Because, like I said, there's can't be only like one person in the Magic Knights who's working with him. But I think he even mentioned that, considering, yeah, because he says based on the circumstances up to this point. Like, I don't know when this kind of decision takes place, but it's at least recent enough to the Royal Knights test that some other stuff must have been happening. Like, maybe the underwater temple was one of those circumstances. Like, I'm just like kind of like trying to find something here to try and like make sense of it. Because so far it's been like the underwater temple, the Forest of Witches, and then you had what happened at Ghost's village where they were taking their children. And then it was the capital invasion. And then the Saucy village were like the main arcs that involved the Outer Midnight Sun. So there had to be something else in those arcs, or some other like minor events that convinced Julius that there was someone else, but he doesn't specify like what exactly. Basically, the fight continues for a little bit, where it also starts to show like how powerful Langris is as well, because like all of them are having such trouble, And it isn't until Asta goes back into like his one power demon form that he's able to like defeat him. And it also starts to show its scenes in like Sora, where it's almost like he starts to see his father and like Asta, and also like Mimosa helping him and trying to heal him after he uses like his trap magic on himself, and her telling him that we're on the same team, we're both magic knights. That sort of like his attitude started to change a bit. So yeah, that was most of volume 14. But like I liked some of the fights. It was like Asta and Magna. They were fighting at one point. Where it was like one huge like back and forth where he made like a new spell. A lot of his stuff is kind of based around baseball in a way. Where he'll create like bats out of fire and like create like another like a ball of fire and like hits it, or he'll like make like a ball of fire and like kind of like throw it or like pitch it like a baseball player or stuff like that. Where he was doing a whole bunch of spells of like throwing magical fireballs at Asta that like disappear and then like reappear behind him, so that he can like barely hit them. But he says 1 in 5 still get past him. And I do kind of like to see that the other characters are getting strong as well. Like Magna and like I know of these guys. And these with characters like Alexdora. It is kind of nice that at least some of these like somewhat minor characters are getting a bit with like the backstory. Just to kind of like flesh them out a bit. It's not like too much, but we sort of understand why Alexdora is doing the stuff he does. So that's kind of nice. Like I don't expect like all of them to get like super developed, like the main characters, but it's like somewhat nice seeing them fleshed out a bit. Like I kind of wish that they would maybe show a bit with like how Langris is the unconscious traitor, because we like barely see him. Like I said, he sort of like the last time he showed up was during the Star Festival, I believe, and I don't think he had any lines. Like I think he just kind of like glowered at Gino when he was announced as like the rising star of the Golden Dawn, and that was about it. I think it's like they also don't mention like how much information he's like giving them or anything like that. And I hope like some of this stuff gets explained later. It's going to finish soon with the Eye of the Midnight Sun. Like I did start reading volume like 15. And I know that stuff is going on with that one, but I also kind of wish that this whole saga had lasted a bit longer, because I feel like there's some stuff that could have explored more, like when they reveal, I think his name was Gildry as the traitor. They really like rushed that, and like revealing Langris as the unconscious traitor. I kind of wish that they at least like expanded stuff like that. Like there's some stuff I could maybe point out, like him somehow figuring out that there's a stone in the underwater temple and like him going to tell them about it or something like that. And I do like looking more with like Fenrir, because I do start to like him a bit more now. Because I think I said in the beginning he wasn't doing that much for me. Like it took a while for like all this stuff to kind of come out with him. Like basically ever since like the end of the underwater temple, when he started to join Asta and Fnash in the fight against Vito, he's been showing up a bit more, and he's been showing a bunch more like character development, and his backstory's getting like expanded on, so that's always pretty nice, because in the beginning he was just kind of there. Like he didn't do much, so I'm glad that's happening. But yeah, I think that's everything for now. So yeah, peace.